Good evening, folks. This is the Factivist report for Sunday, the 13th of November. And it goes without saying that the fucking red wave didn't happen. And we are really happy with the way things are going right now. We have the Senate. We need RAPHAEL Warnock to give us 51 senators, so it's not all on Kamala Harris's back to be the tiebreaker. And we need to hold the House if we can. And there is now apparently a path to that. We have defeated, a lot of MAGA secretaries of state, 12 of them, I believe. We have defeated a lot of governors. And needless to say, the GOP is in disarray because they have canceled all of their leadership selection meetings and are now looking at 2024 and to see how they can do better. And the Democrats, they need to do the same goddamn thing. We need to put the nail in the fascist coffin. There are still plenty of people we need to take out of office in the right way by voting, who are, by the way, still seditionists. Jim Jordan, Josh Hawley, Matt Gaetz, Marjorie Taylor Greene, they are still all there. They need to go. I'm going to turn this over to Dave.
So I know that I will not be talking about candidates one by one for the most part, except for the one outstanding race that's happening in the Colorado 3rd, only to tell you the timetable as to how long this might take to be decided. Overall, Election Day was a very good day. There were some races that we lost. I didn't want J.D. Vance to defeat Tim Ryan. That was a bad loss. The losses in California were bad. We had Marco Rubio winning against Val Demings, and we also had Jim Abbott win. But for the most part,
Greg Abbott.
Did I say Jim Abbott?
Yeah, Greg
Jim Abbott was a pitcher. I don't know why. My phone must have thrown me off. So Greg Abbott won, as well as a bunch of other people. But we did have
Ron DeSantis won.
And Ron DeSantis won. We did have some right wingers lose, even in Texas. Myra Flowers, lost. We had a ton of victories. We do also had some things that we have to tighten up and learn from. Even if we had victories, even in my own state of New York, we have a little bit of a rift, which I will talk about a little bit. And we need to learn a little bit more about how to get things done without losing ground. So without further ado.
Can I just say one thing before you start?
Yeah.
I would like to mention that everybody was actually gushing over how Ron DeSantis's career has taken off since his victory. I just want to say this. I really believe you will see the shine diminish on him. I don't think he is the story of the midterms. I think Gretchen Whitmer is the story of the midterms. A woman who, by all accounts, was working with nothing in her state, a totally GOP-dominated legislature that would allow her to do nothing. She learned how to use her Supreme Court in the abortion battle, and she did, and she never stopped. She won the governorship against Tudor Dixon by double digits. And by the way, the Democrats are now in control of both houses of the legislature for the first time in 40 years. That was Gretchen Whitmer's on her back. She pulled that stuff through. And she is the story of the midterms from my perspective. So I'm just wondering.
You also have to give Gretchen Whitmer some time to put her feet on the ground now that she has a full, a trifecta in that state. They already have abortion rights in their constitution, so they're going to go after some other issues.
Yeah.
But you can't. Oh, why didn't she do this, and why hasn't she done that? She has a trifecta. Give her a minute. Things do take time.
I would like people to also understand that none of this takes effect until January. Okay,
Right.
Everybody
Yep.
who's currently in finishes this year. All right, this doesn't start tomorrow, and it doesn't start in December when maybe the rest of all the races are called, but it will happen. So I'm going to let you go, Dave. Go ahead.
All right. So hold on. Where am I? Oh. So the very first thing that I want to tell people is that this was an overwhelming victory, if only because it's historic. For decades, it has always been that the incumbent loses ground. And they didn't really lose ground. They gained a lot of things. They gained governorships. They gained state legislatures, which is huge. And we gained a Senate seat. So far, we may come out, even, and we will see in terms of the House. But this CNN story by Henry Hinton of November 13th of this year, he lays out how this has been for both parties for decades. He also gives reasons as to why this happened the way it did, mostly because of an overly extremist Republican side, and because of Roe v. Wade. And those things, they caused Voldemort, Rick Scott, to call this an utter disappointment, which makes us so very happy and warm inside. Just so you know.
Yeah. And, I just want to make one comment here about Lord Voldemort. What made them think it was a good idea to give him all those millions of dollars, considering the fact that in his private life, he was the overseer of the biggest Medicare fraud in history? Did they think that was a good idea? Oh, I don't know. Maybe they've dug their own grave.
Right. And again, not going to talk too much about it. You have to take a look at the candidates who have been elected. You have J.D. Vance, who helped provide legal counsel for Oath Keepers, okay, and who also created a nonprofit with the Sacklers and Purdue with OxyContin. So I'm just saying we're going to see things develop over time. This is from the New York Times. This is a live tracker. It shows now we have 19 undecided votes, or 19 undecided races, rather. So I guess a Republican won, because before it was 211 to 204. So now you have one less that they have to win. There was one that was really close. So we have Duarte in the California 13 up by 84 votes with 61% left. Okay. Beaubert, this right here, automatically in Colorado, if you have less than 1/2 of a percentage point lead, it automatically goes to a recount, so you know. So we have these that have not been called yet. Katie Porter has not been called yet. She's up by over 5,000 votes with 72%. So in Maine, Golden up over 10,000 votes, 95%. Just so you know.
Those are all looking pretty good.
Yeah, they are. And Deb, you were asking about Peltola. She's going to win.
I think she's going to win too. The question is she going to win on the first ballot? Because what has to happen is she has to get to 50%. That may happen. She's got 80. There's only 80% of the votes have been counted. That could happen on the first ballot. But what they're essentially saying is she'll start, if there's a second round, she'll start with a huge lead, and it would take Palin would have to take, tons of votes to win the thing. So
right. Let them waste money too.
Yeah, why not?
So,
and again, honestly, I'm unclear about how I feel about ranked choice voting. I don't know yet.
I'm not sure either. This is just talking about the timeline in which it'll take. This race is going to take some time to be counted. And if Lauren Boebert loses her seat in the Colorado 3rd, it will be worth it.
Yep. Because I got to tell you, she more than anybody was out there blabbing about the red wave. And honestly, I didn't see her do a whole hell of a lot of campaigning. So she thought she was just a fucking shoo-in.
Yep. So November 16th, they have to, it's called a cure period. You have time to fix errors or signature discrepancies. Then after that, the Secretary of State's office selects at least one statewide contest, one contest in each county to audit. Obviously, this is going to be audited. So the Secretary of State of Colorado, Jenna Griswold, a Democrat who has tussled with election deniers, was reelected on Tuesday, according to AP, and that's the AP. So specific ballots are chosen randomly to be audited by bipartisan election judges in each county and must be completed by the 29th. Once you complete that process, if the candidates are separated by less than 1/2 of 1 percentage point, the Secretary of State has until December 5th to order a mandatory recount, and it has to be completed by December 13th. And then after that, if the candidates wish to ask for a recount, they can do so, but they have to pay for it out of their own pocket. So this could very well take a while.
Boebert has already been out there on Twitter asking for money, just so you know.
Yeah. Here are recount laws, if you guys want to check that out. Basically, the main thing you need to know is 1/2 of 1% is the number. So I think everybody knows Democrats kept the Senate. So I think Masto beating Laxalt was the one that pushed it over the top.
It did.
And I will have numbers, or I will have information for those of you who wish to volunteer for RAPHAEL Warnock. I'll have that information at the end, and it'll also be posted here. If you guys just want to, whatever, if you at some point want to just go to that, it'll be right at the end of the video, just so you know.
We need people to step it up. We need that seat. We seriously, beyond, giving us 51 senators, do you really, really think that Herschel Walker belongs in the fucking Senate? Because if you do, I'm suggesting that you may need an intervention. I just, this is a guy who thinks the climate change bill that Biden passed was about buying trees. I just can't.
For those of you,
it goes beyond the low character thing now. We're talking about competence right now.
To those of you who question RAPHAEL Warnock and or John Ossoff in terms of how progressive they are or whatever, fine. Then primary them. Don't worry. Don't do it this way. New York lost a seat in that way, and I will talk about it in a minute. But we cannot lose ground because of purity testing. And purity testing is, he's not enough of a Democrat, so I'm going to sacrifice him and let him lose. We don't have the luxury of doing that, ideologically or numbers wise.
We're not staring fascism in the face. That's when you
Right.
have that luxury. And by the way, let me just say this. I don't think that Democratic Party voters voting at 50% has anything to do with them thinking that Warnock's not a progressive enough candidate. That's the MO of this nation. It is. I mean, if you look at all of the voter turnout over the last, I don't know how many years, it's hard to get to 60%. You know,
Right.
It really is. And it's amazing to me because there are places in this world that would love to have the opportunity to have a legitimate vote.
I think we talked about it in developed nations in terms of voting percentages. We're like 35th, I believe it was, something crazy. What I will say, and I remember this number, Georgia, 52% of registered voters voted in the midterms. And again, I understand it's the midterms.
Yeah, well,
Midterms
I don't understand what people think about that. Why? Because someone's not running for president? It basically is the composition of your government. Well, why wouldn't you vote? I don't get it.
So one huge victory, and Deb mentioned it, it wasn't just Michigan. We had the 4 M's. We had Michigan, Minnesota, Massachusetts, and I always forget the other one, Maryland. All of those now have trifectas, and that's very important, especially if you want to enact new legislation in your state, such as codifying Roe. They don't have to do that in Michigan, because I heard that they have a constitutional amendment in regards to that. But it's huge. So there's Gretchen Whitmer, who has been amazing fighting off certain legislation from 2 right-wing parts of the legislature. So now she has a trifecta. Let's see what she can do. So, and again, here it is. We got Michigan with Gretchen Whitmer, Minnesota with Tim Walz as the governor, Maryland, the first
black
governor,
of Maryland,
Wes Moore, and Massachusetts, the first
governor, first LGBT governor.
Right. I'll get into diversity in a little bit. I will say there are some examples of just because you're diverse doesn't mean you're a good candidate. But here's the next thing. Young voters. Whenever young voters come out, it's fantastic for the Democratic Party.
It is.
Okay. Now I know that Gen Z candidate won in Florida. Here's one thing that I have to say.
That's him right there on the left.
Yep.
Maxwell Frost.
So what I have to say about young people running is it's fantastic because they are energized and they're passionate. However, they're young and they don't know how to negotiate yet. That might be an issue sometimes. And there might be some strategical errors.
Yeah, well, I can name one. Maxwell Frost, right there. I really like the kid. Don't get me wrong, I do. But right after he won the primary, he came out bashing the baby boomers as the cause of all the problems in America. You know what? You don't want to poke the bear like that. I'm just saying.
No, you don't.
You need to work with people. You know what? There are a lot of people in the Democratic Party that aren't Gen Zers. There are a lot of people in the Democratic Party who want all the way to the left. But you know what? You disenfranchise those voters and they're going to move the other way. This is called strategy, and you need to know what it's all about. That's all I'm going to say.
one of the things that happened in this, and Gen Zers were part of it, is Maloney, who was the DCC chair, the Democratic chair, basically, of New York. He lost his race. And the Gen Zers made a comment to the effect of, you don't want to upset us because we're not going to automatically support you. That is potentially a mistake. Just because you don't agree with someone on everything, or even if they're better than the other guy, you have a Democrat who's better than the Republican, you might want to support him over the Republican and then primary him later.
Yep.
This is some working families numbers. Now, they did have some very good numbers.
Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
Throwing the fucking seat to the GOP is never an option. So let me make this utterly clear here. Okay. There are still plenty of fascists in government right now. They are not going away. Donald Trump is not going away. Ron DeSantis is going to run for president. He's almost a bigger fascist than Donald Trump, and he's on steroids. They're not going away. We don't want any seats given away because we're dumb, okay? Make them earn those seats, but don't give them away. That's all I'm going to say.
So we have the Working Families Party, okay? Kathy Hochul won by 325,000 votes, which, by the way, isn't enough.
Right.
Lee Zeldin was an extreme candidate. So he was anti-abortion, or he was pro-life to an extreme degree, and he had extreme views on a lot of stuff. He was pro-Trump, and 325,000 votes. What happens if you just move it just a little bit? I don't want to lose the governorship of New York. I just don't. But 325,000 votes, 250,000 of those were the WFP line. Now, why does that matter? You take 250,000 of those votes and give that to someone else on a primary in a governor primary, I don't know, maybe to an ALC, that you have some leverage now. But you have to know, where are you going to use that leverage? Right now, we have someone who is close to Hochul's campaign. His name is Jay Jacobs. He is anti-progressive candidates, or anti-democratic socialist candidates, who made inappropriate comments about someone who won a Buffalo primary and was somehow able to get her ousted. And we have AOC and a lot of the progressive New York politicians asking for him to be ousted. Fine. Go through that. Kathy Hochul is not going to automatically give him up. But if it's that important to you, you need to look into it. We have Sean Patrick Maloney. This is the person who lost his seat. He was the Democratic Congressional Committee chair. He was a shoo-in. They thought he was going to win with no problem, by at least double-digit percentage. He lost. He was supported by the police union, et cetera, et cetera. So he, now you have the politicians on both sides, the more moderate side and on the more progressive side fighting with each other as to who helped lose this seat, because it was a very lucrative seat. Of course, Maloney is blaming AOC. AOC is blaming Jay Jacobs. Stop. We need to regroup and decide what direction can we take New York, whether it be keeping the moderates in or moving a little farther left. However we need to do this, we need to keep this state Democrat, because we have things like this happen. Republicans voting in Democratic primaries to put moderates in and have them run, knowing full well that the Democrats may at this point let those seats go. Do you see where we're going with this? They're doing the same thing that we did on the other side. By the way, all of those the Republican candidates that we backed in primaries failed. So this is going to be a primary strategy for a while, or, even more so now. Just so you know. This is the New York Working Families Party page. Anybody wants to take a look at these guys? They are a very active group. They're a very political, passionate group. As I said, we need to figure out what we need to do. I think personally, I told Deb this before. I think it was at the time, I thought it was the right move not to spend extra resources to run a more progressive candidate against Goldman in District 10. And I actually like the candidate that would have run against him in a runoff a lot. I think she's very passionate. Yulene New would have made a fantastic House rep. But that's not where we are now. We cannot give up resources and give up seats like this. All of the rest of this next few are.
We also backed the squad.
Yeah.
And they were all reelected, I believe, were they not?
Yes, they were.
Yeah.
They were. AOC didn't really, in all honesty, she didn't really have that much opposition, to be honest with you. She was a right-wing crazy person. So Mike Lawler, first Republican to beat a DCCC chair in 40 years.
And
okay.
So what did we accomplish there? Not a fucking thing.
And this is part of this whole thing. So Jay Jacobs, who is a moderate Republican, did it on the other side.
Moderate Democrat.
Moderate Democrat, yes. There was a candidate in the Buffalo race who ran, and won the primary. Okay, Walton, self-described Democratic socialist who beat Democratic incumbent Byron Brown in the Buffalo mayor race. And so she was being touted as, a great candidate. This guy, Jay Jacobs, compared her to David Duke, saying, well, we're not, what would we do? What would happen if we endorsed David Duke? And all hell broke loose, but the damage was done, and she lost to the guy that she had primaried. So this has created a huge controversy. And now we have people within the Democratic Party in New York asking for Jay Jacobs to resign or for Kathy Hochul to oust him. She's not doing it yet. We'll see what happens.
We need to let the fucking bodies get cool first, okay?
Right, exactly. So I'm just telling you that that's the landscape right now. And we lost four seats. We didn't lose, but there were 3 of them were races or seats that we didn't have, like Stefanik and Maliakakis, and there was another one. But we lost 4 opportunities in New York, including that seat being flipped. However, let's go back to the wins. A more diverse midterm than any other in history. We mentioned Frost in Florida, Maura Healey. We have the first Black governor of Maryland, and we have Katie Britt
elected to the Senate from Alabama. That's a great.
Now, what I will say is that, as I said, just because someone is diverse doesn't necessarily make them a good candidate. Katie Britt is far right, which I don't really understand how she can be far right and vote against.
And be a woman.
And be a woman, whatever. So, want to give some flowers to Tina Kotek, who was the second openly lesbian governor. She of Oregon, or wait a minute, of Oregon, and bisexual woman Kate Brown of Oregon. Jared Polis, who was reelected on Tuesday. Jared Polis is great in Colorado. So,
by the way, overall, 400 LGBTQ candidates won their races this time around.
And that will be fantastic for codifying gay marriage and maybe even solidifying some adoption laws and things of that nature.
Right.
Going down the line. We'll see. I didn't even know about this one. Robert Garcia, first openly gay immigrant elected to Congress. So,
wow, Vermont too. She won. Becca Ballant. I remember doing a show about these people.
Yep. Wes Moore was the first Black governor of Maryland. Kathy Hochul, by the way, is already getting bashed for being anti-gun, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, whatever.
Exactly. First Black woman elected to statewide executive office in Massachusetts. Lee Finke, first transgender person elected to the Minnesota legislature. The Zoe Zephyr, first transgender state legislator in Montana. And if you think that this doesn't matter, this is going to translate to changes in LGBTQ laws down the line. May not happen like right away. One person being in the legislature isn't going to, but over time, hopefully these numbers will grow. So,
by the way, I don't know where it's at right now, but in Pennsylvania, the Democrats were pretty convinced they could flip that state, the legislature. So we'll have to see where that goes, because that's not.
I'm not sure about that yet. I'm not sure. So we have a couple others that I wanted to mention. With a Muslim in Georgia, first known Muslim and Palestinian elected to the state house in Georgia. That's huge. That's a southern state electing
it's the
a
Bible
Muslim woman.
Yeah.
So this is showing you that things are starting to, the opinions are starting to change. She was talking about being an 8-year-old girl sitting in the back of the bus talking with kids joking that, oh, those are the bombers in the back, kind of thing. And now she's 29 years old and elected to the state house. That's a huge deal. Anybody under 30 years old, especially who is in an underrepresented group, that's great. Now, if they are representing people in their rights. Now, here's an example of someone, just because you're different doesn't mean that you're a good candidate. Mark Wayne Mullen, elected to the U.S. Senate, will become the only Native American U.S. Senator. Now, I think I've talked about Kevin Stitt before, who is the governor of Oklahoma. He's also pretty horrible, and he's put in some horrible legislation in Oklahoma. But I remember this guy. So he's the only native this guy is representing Oklahoma too. Oklahoma, what am I going to tell you? That it is a right-wing state. So this has been called. He defeated Kendra Horn, a former congresswoman. So, conservative Republican who has represented Oklahoma's second congressional district since 2013. So, keep an eye on him. Current incumbent James Inhofe announced February he would resign the seat. So, now, I posted this story because I want to make a point. We don't have U.S. I'm not talking about U.S. House. I'm not talking about U.S. Senate. Okay, I'm talking about state houses. But I believe there were two legislatures or state houses, state offices, where a guy dies during the election and they still win. Now, they're going to have a special election on this stuff. Okay. A state lawmaker in Pennsylvania won re-election by a landslide, even though he died last month. That says something, So you're going to have a re-election there. But my point being that one of the drawbacks of this election, even though it was fantastic, I don't know if we could have done any better, to be completely honest with you. We still have to be careful, because even let's say we win the House, it's going to be a razor thin margin, and who knows what happens in the next 2 years. Here are the ages of some of the members of Congress. So we could have people pass away or retire. So the oldest is Dianne Feinstein. She's 87 years old. Chuck Grassley, also 87 years old. Richard Shelby. Most of these are Republicans.
I don't know. I read an article that said Grassley was 89. I don't know who's right.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know if that's
okay.
That could be. That could be. The article could have been wrong. I forget.
No, actually, wait a minute. No, you're absolutely right. That's a typo. It is 89, because if you look at his birthday, it's 9/17/33. So that means that he is 89 years old.
And so was Feinstein then.
Yep.
Yep.
So they're almost 90. Yep. So I'm just saying it's possible one or both could resign or pass away. Okay. We have Richard Shelby, who's in their late 80s, let's just say. I'm not going to do the math here now. This might be a while. This might be old, actually. I bet you that's. Yeah, it's from 2021. That's right. Yeah. Okay. So Richard Shelby, Jim Inhofe, Patrick Leahy, I believe, retired. Bernie Sanders, so he's 80 now. Mitch McConnell. So here, you get my idea. You get my point.
Bitch McConnell. It's Bitch McCon, man. Get it right. Hey.
Don Young, he actually passed away, and that's how we got Peltola. So kind of proves my point. Eddie Johnson, I don't know, Democrat from Texas. Alcee Hastings, Grace Napoleon, all these people are in their 80s. So things can happen. My point is that you have to plan and have someone potentially in place, in mind, in case something happens, in case somebody retires or whatever. However, there are things that are happening right now, and that is the runoff between RAPHAEL Warnock and I can't even HERSCHEL Walker. So I have a couple of resources here. Okay. The Working Families Party, they're doing an information campaign. They're also doing letter writing. They're doing all sorts of different things, with text banking, phone banking, that kind of thing. We got to keep going. We got to keep doing this. And Moms on Demand, they also have some things going on. And I have here what just happened? There we go. Oh, what just happened? They do that. All right. Oh, no, don't do that. All right, hold on. I just lost the. By
the way, let me just tell you, yes, Patrick Leahy retired. The seat was taken by a Democrat, Peter Welch, who moved from the House to the Senate. Vermont is a very blue state.
Oh, it's extremely blue. I think that's probably why Patrick Leahy was willing to retire. One thing I want to say while my computer is having a temper tantrum, I want to stop hearing progressives talk about how selfish Ruth Bader Ginsburg was by staying in her seat. There was nothing selfish about it. I'm sure she would have loved to have taken a break. You know what I mean? But you don't know what active cases were going on.
You know what? So, let me just say this. Ruth Bader Ginsburg was the only fucking Supreme Court justice who actually understood the Constitution and how it applied to human beings. Her job, they are lifetime appointments. If you don't want a lifetime appointment, then support the bill that the Democrats are going to file to make it a term limited position. She had a lifetime appointment. She did her job. She did right by the American people, and she kept the Supreme Court on an even keel. You got nothing to complain about with Ruth Bader Ginsburg if you're not bitching about the Supreme Court right now. Shut your word hole. Blame the Republicans who held up a perfectly legitimate candidate. Okay, you need to stop blaming first of all, the Democrats need to stop blaming the right fucking people. All right, it isn't Ruth Bader Ginsburg's fault that the Republicans stole the freaking SCOTUS. Okay, that's the Republicans'
right.
Stop the shit. Okay, I'm done hearing it.
But anyway, let's get back. I know I derailed the train, but another phone bank from every town, okay, and moms on demand. If you don't want to do it through the Working Families Party, and here is information from the official Georgia government website on how to register by absentee. If you don't want to go to a polling place, you can ask for an absentee ballot. I would do it as soon as humanly possible. Go onto this website and request that ballot. I believe you could do it by email even. You don't have to go and mail anything. But all of the information will be on this website. So, but we need to continue, and we need to win that race. When I saw how close the Herschel Walker RAPHAEL Warnock race was, I was depressed. I do have family in Virginia or in Georgia, sorry. And I was like, I understand about the evangelicals. I understand that, but I also know that there are good people in Georgia. Well, where are you people? 52% of you voted, the registered voters. I just, we need to do better. We need to do better in the midterms. They are important. So, you got anything?
Oh, I was just reading an article. Yes, by the way, so Welch moved into Leahy's seat, and it was Becca Ballant that moved into Welch's seat. We just
Okay.
Yeah. So
Okay. Right.
those seats stayed Democrat. No, the only thing I want to say here is, let the GOP do their finger pointing. All right. Let them do their finger pointing. That's what they're doing now. They're imploding. Let them implode. All right. We came out of the midterms in better shape than we would have come out of the midterms had this been a normal midterm cycle. Okay. Now, I have no doubt in my mind that the MAGA forces brought out some voters, and the Democrats did well. So let's take a breath. Let's enjoy it. Let's see what we can do with the House, because, everybody thought that was pretty much lost, and now there's a path there. We'll see where that goes. But one way or another, we need to, if they win the House, we need to stop whatever they're doing in the Senate. It needs to just be, we need to play hardball now, right through to 2024, because that's what they would be doing with us. All right. And we
do have to say
bad policies go through.
Yeah, I do have to say that in regards to a political party, there should be a deal breaker. If you are going to vote for pro-life legislation and not codify Roe v. Wade, for Democrats, that should be a deal breaker. Okay, if you are voting against LGBT rights, or that should be a deal breaker. If you're voting against voter rights, which is, by the way, what Kristen Sinema did, that should be a deal breaker. However, in terms of how quote unquote progressive you are, or how moderate you are, depending on where you live and depending on your income, not everybody is going to be the same. Okay, as long as you are willing to provide legislation that helps everybody for the most part, what is the problem?
Well,
now,
there should be deal breakers across the board. If you have been accused of abusing women.
Oh, that too. Oh, yeah. I was only talking about legislative, but yeah.
There should be deal breakers for people who get to run for public office to begin with.
Right.
All of this shit needs to be, when we get better situated, all of this shit needs to be talked about. It really does.
And by the way, I mean, if you really want me to say on camera or on paper, do I think Jay Jacobs should leave? Yes, I do. He should have accepted the wishes of the people who voted in Buffalo and endorsed that candidate, despite his personal feelings.
I agree.
That should have disqualified him. However, all of this infighting is going to do no good. If you have a problem with that, there are forms that you can find. Contact the Working Families Party and work to have Jay Jacobs ousted. I agree that he should move on. However, you don't make these fights public. It just weakens you. and it makes you look weak in front of the voting base, and it makes you also look petty, like all you're doing is sour grapes and fighting over each other. I'm not saying that that's what it is, but some of this is about image too. Right now we have
perception versus reality, folks.
Correct. Now we have Ron DeSantis and Donald Trump fighting with mostly Donald Trump slamming into DeSantis. We have a lot of people finger pointing at Trump, saying that he's the reason that they lost. You know what? I'm going to say to them, you know what? That's partially right, but you took his endorsement. So you own that.
Hold on. The Republican Party handed themselves over to Donald Trump. They all deserve the blame for this shit. Okay? There's no question about it. Listen to what they were saying in the tapes from January 6th, unsolicited, about Donald Trump. Listen to what they were saying about Donald Trump before he decided to run. Listen to Lindsey Graham's comments about Trump, Mitch McConnell's comments about Trump, Kevin McCarthy's comments about Trump. And then they turned their party over to him knowing exactly what he was. Okay? You know what, folks? Life is tough, isn't it? That's all I can say. But by the same token, I really agree that we need to push the Democratic Party further to the left.
I do too.
But you know what?
When it's not there, it's not there.
Left that you disenfranchise the rest of your voters, because that's now what is happening with the GOP. And you can see it happening in real time.
You have to be gracious winners, but you have to also be gracious losers too.
Right.
And strategic, and know that people are going to pull moves. And instead of, eventually we're going to win some more huge races. We are. And I just don't want us to lose races because we are too inexperienced in terms of negotiating and in terms of like messaging and bringing things out. I think that the Gen Z movement is going to be potentially amazing.
I do too.
But you cannot, as Deb said, you cannot alienate everyone, because you're gonna lose.
All I'm saying is come out swinging at the right people. That's what I'm saying.
Exactly.
Okay?
Exactly. And by the way, House Rep Goldman, congratulations, but you better listen to your base, because I already hear that they're organizing against you. So you want to keep your House seat. Just saying, you need to consider housing reform instead of feeding your corporate buddies. Just saying on camera.
Okay, guys.
Congratulations on the seat.
Yeah, and all I'm going to say is that right now, I don't want anybody on the Democratic Party side to sit around thinking that we got this. Okay?
Oh, we don't.
They are not going away. These people are not going away. As I've said earlier, and I'm only going to say it one more time, they're all still in government. Okay? They still are in government. Okay? Lauren Boebert hasn't lost her seat yet. All of the suspects that Trump already installed in there are there. They need to be removed. It's going to take several cycles. We cannot sit back now and think, we got the Senate, we don't have to worry. We need RAPHAEL Warnock. We need to build for the future. By the way, one other comment that I saw today. Well, if we primary Joe Manchin, that seat's going to go to a Republican. You know what? Let me just say this. Joe Manchin might as well be a fucking Republican. He has literally stepped up, crossed the aisle, and voted against almost every Democratic Party initiative that Joe Biden has proposed. Okay? And we must be able to find one centrist candidate in West Virginia who supports a woman's right to choose and supports LGBTQ rights that can run against Joe Manchin and give us a better result in that state than we are getting right now. I already know the Arizona Democrats are very unhappy with Kirsten Sinema, and I believe she will be primaried come 2024. But we need to start thinking about where we win now in 2024. We don't sit back and think the GOP isn't doing this, because Mitch McConnell already said it. We need to forget talking about the leadership right now and think about what we can do to have a better result in 2024. They're not going away. And the party is still owned by Trump.
We're going to be looking at the board probably sometime, early 2023. I'm not going to do it this year probably, but you have seats like Ted Cruz and those guys coming up. What I will say too, don't you dare tell me that we can't primary Sinema because we can't win in Arizona. We did. So we showed that leverage a long time ago. Manchin's a different story. He might lose to a Republican now anyway. I'm hearing that that some people aren't happy with him, with the way he dealt with Build Back Better and all that other stuff.
Happy with that. That could have benefited his constituents.
Right. Now, a couple other things. As I have told you, even if we win everything, which is huge, because we couldn't have done any better, because we have a president with a low approval rating, whether you agree with it or not. We have a bad economic situation, however we got there, and we have a midterm. So historically, we did as well as we possibly could have. However, even if we win the House, we have a razor-thin majority. What happens if someone leaves, quits, gets indicted or dies or whatever? Something always happens within 2 years. Something happens to someone, or they move on. They go to a firm or whatever. As I said, Dianne Feinstein is getting up in age. So are a few other people. Chuck Grassley, the same thing. What happens if one of those leaves? We have to make sure that we, as I said, have a plan in place, and that we do everything possible to unseat these people. And even if we don't unseat them, put out the strongest possible candidate that we can. And we don't have to put progressives in Texas. We've seen how that works. It doesn't really work. If you have to put a moderate Democrat in there that believes in abortion rights, let's do it. Let's get it done. How great would it be to primary Ted Cruz? Or to defeat Ted Cruz, rather. Even primary. I don't think the Republicans would do that. They love him. He's their darling. And there are plenty of people that are going to be up in that election. So,
and by the way, we have Democrats that are going to be up in that election as well.
Right, and we have to protect those people. The other thing, I don't want to hear about adding seats to the Supreme Court. We don't have the numbers for it. I don't want to hear about codifying this or codifying that or whatever. The whole thing with the student loan stuff, that's a different topic for a different day. But all of these different federal aid programs, we'll do what we can, but we still have a razor-thin majority. And Sinema and Manchin might vote to block that kind of stuff. So even though we might have a majority, it's not a huge majority. So everybody needs to calm down and stop blaming Biden for everything. He will do what he can based on what he has. He told you that. He's not lying to you.
Okay. Let's get the numbers up for 2024 so we can expand the Supreme Court. Because to do that, it has to go through the House and the Senate. That doesn't just happen. You just don't decide to add 2 seats and expect Joe Biden to wave his magic wand, make 2 seats open and stick 2 people in. People need to understand how the system works, okay? If you don't know it yet, start looking it up. It's all over the internet. I will talk to you
And
guys.
thank you, Gen Z, but you guys need to learn how to negotiate and listen to your constituents. Maybe there's something that they think is important and you don't. You know, maybe there's something that I want to talk about this for 2 seconds. I was on a stream and I mentioned crime because my union rep or my union members said that they were worried about it in New York City. They're like, well, that's not a problem. Well, if I'm in your district and I'm telling you it's a problem, don't tell me that it's not. Tell me what you're doing to fix it. That's telling me that you don't care. You know, I understand that the Republicans are pushing that narrative. You can say that Republicans are pushing that narrative, but here are the things that we have done in the past 2 years, because I know you've done things. Okay. Learn to communicate better with your constituents. That's all I'm saying. Thanks, guys.
Okay, gang. We'll see y'all next week.